Hi, I'm Ron Bateman, the Sheriff of Anne Arundel County. Welcome to your Anne Arundel's Most Wanted program, a program where we showcase wanted criminals, highlight open cases, and look to you for tips. You, concerned citizens that share my same goal, and that's keeping our communities safe. You'd be proud to know that your calls have allowed us to put handcuffs on thousands of criminals. So sit back, set your DVR, or grab a pen and paper, and help do your part in catching criminals. You're watching Anne Arundel's Most Wanted.
Thank you for joining us for this month's Anne Arundel's Most Wanted. I'm Lieutenant Jennifer Gilbert Duran with the Anne Arundel Sheriff's Office, and my first guest is Corporal Amy Megath with the Annapolis Police Department. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
What'd you bring us?
I've got 4 today. The first one is Adolfo Antonio Serrano. He also goes by Aspero. His date of birth is March 2nd of 1982. He's a Hispanic male, 5 foot 5 inches tall, weighing 140 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. His last known address is 1282 Graff Court. He also has lived at 1297 Ashton Court in Annapolis. He has 2 open warrants. One is for second-degree assault. The other is failing to appear in court for driving without a license. In reference to the first warrant, an officer responded to Anne Arundel Medical Center for a report of a domestic assault. They spoke to an adult female victim who reported that in October of 2014, Serrano came into her home. When Serrano arrived, he knocked on the bedroom door, which was locked. The victim opened the door, and Serrano grabbed her by the throat with his right hand. Serrano strangled the victim for approximately 10 seconds, using only one hand, while pinning her against the wall. Serrano told her he was going to kill her as he was holding her by the throat. Serrano then punched her with a closed fist several times in the face, and the officer obtained this warrant for his arrest. The second subject we have is Trey Alexander Pittman. His date of birth is July 6th of 1994. He's a black male, 6 feet tall, 150 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. His last known address is 8117 River Park Road in Bowie, and he has an open warrant for theft less than $1,000. On May 14th of 2015, Annapolis officers responded to the Kohl's at 260 Old Solomon's Island Road for a theft of clothing. The store loss prevention employee reported that Pittman and 2 men entered the store and grabbed various items. Pittman and the men he was with went into the dressing room area with these items. The store employee checked the dressing room after Pittman and the men left and discovered empty packaging from the items. Pittman and the men left the store, got into a vehicle, and left the area before officers arrived. Officers investigated and were able to identify Pittman as one of the suspects in the theft and obtained this warrant. Third subject we have is Louise Bowery. She also goes by Ms. Lou. Her date of birth is March 19th, 1961. She's a black female, 4 foot 10 inches tall, weighing 110 pounds, with gray hair and brown eyes. She has tattoos on her left forearm and right arm. And her last known address is 1429 Telegraph Road in Severn. She has a warrant for theft less than $100. This warrant stems from an incident reported in March of 2013. An Annapolis police officer responded to a home in the 1100 block of Madison Street for a theft that occurred earlier. The victim reported that 5 different prescription medications were stolen from her apartment the night before by a woman known to her. The victim gave the officer a description of the suspect and a nickname. Through investigation, the officer identified Louise Bowery as the suspect in the theft and obtained this arrest warrant for Bowery. And the last subject is Troy Dannell Johnson. His date of birth is April 11th of 1980. He's a black male, 6 foot 4 inches tall, weighing 250 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He has tattoos on his chest, arm, and back, and his last known address is 1195 Madison Street, apartment A1 in Annapolis. He has an arrest warrant for second-degree assault. On November 30th of 2015, officers responded to the Anne Arundel Medical Center for a domestic assault that occurred in Annapolis. The adult female victim reported that she was assaulted by her boyfriend, Troy Johnson. She and Johnson had a verbal argument about their relationship ending, and Johnson started packing up his belongings. The victim started to help him pack up his things when he became irate. Johnson pushed her on the bed and began to strangle her with his hands around her throat. Johnson covered her mouth with his hands, making it hard for her to breathe. She tried to leave the home, and he pushed her to the floor and dragged her back to the bedroom. The victim tried to get free from his hold, but Johnson put her in a chokehold. The woman feared for her life and felt like Johnson was going to kill her, so she gave up the fight and laid still until Johnson fell asleep. The victim was then able to leave the home and went to the hospital for treatment.
Unreal. All right, viewers, if you know where any of those individuals are, do not approach them. Instead, call that number on your screen, 410-222-1490 or 911, 24 hours a day, and an officer will be out to respond and investigate. Corporal, thank you for joining us. And my next guest is Detective Sergeant Ed Diker, MSP Glen Burnie. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
What have you brought for us?
Today we have three. The first one is John Monroe Howells. He's a white male, birth date of August 6, 1961. On August 21st, 2015, Howells became the target of an illegal drug operation at his mother's residence in Owings, Maryland. During the investigation, a pole surveillance camera was installed along a driveway of an adjacent residence. Howells became aware of that camera by a neighbor telling him about seeing two persons installing the cover over the camera. And that same evening, Howells was seen walking around his property over to the camera and then spray painted the lens of the camera with black spray paint. As a result of Howells' actions, a criminal summons was issued for malicious destruction of government property, of which he's failed to appear for in his July 2016 court date. As a result of that failure to appear, an active arrest warrant is on file for Howells at this time. His whereabouts are unknown at this time, but it's believed he frequents the lower Anne Arundel County area. Our second subject is James LeLaver Breeden. In June 2016, troopers conducted a traffic stop on Mr. Breeden, who was in a red Infiniti vehicle, where Breeden was the driver. Upon initial contact, Breeden did provide his driver's license to the trooper, but refused to answer any questions or follow any requests by the troopers. As the two troopers were standing next to the vehicle, Breeden put it in drive and drove away at a high rate of speed, narrowly striking both troopers. Troopers gave chase but discontinued the chase as Breeden entered into Baltimore City. As a result of the chase and ensuing traffic violations, an arrest warrant has been issued on Breeden for failing to obey lawful orders of a police officer and fleeing and eluding a police officer in official capacity. Breeden currently has a Virginia address but has ties to the Baltimore City and Anne Arundel County area. And our last subject is LaDon Renee Howard. In October 2015, Howard was located on the shoulder of I-97 where troopers stopped to check on her condition. As the troopers approached the vehicle, they observed Howard jump up from inside the vehicle, put the car in drive, and take off. Troopers attempted to get her attention. However, she continued on traveling into the I-97, cutting traffic off in an attempt to get over to the left far lane. Troopers began to pursue Howard, where she went up 97 North onto the Beltway. Two civilian vehicles, one being a motorcycle, saw the chase and attempted to help the troopers block in Miss Howard's vehicle, but she was able to get over and take the exit ramp for Ritchie Highway. At that point, she headed north on Ritchie Highway, where a cab driver observed the chase and again attempted to try and block in Howard along with troopers behind her. That too was unsuccessful. She was able to turn into a gas station where troopers and Anne Arundel County police vehicles were able to box in and contain her, ending the pursuit. She was subsequently arrested at the time and charged with driving under the influence of PCP, which was laced on cigarettes she was smoking. Howard has since been arrested again for possessing a controlled dangerous substance, and as such has an active arrest warrant on her for violation of probation for her DUI charge earlier in the year. She has a Curtis Bay address, but frequents the Anne Arundel County area, particularly the Annapolis area.
Well, I'm certainly appreciating citizen support of law enforcement in those scenarios. I just have to caution, you really need to be careful and make sure you're safe. For those of you in the show, if you know where any of those individuals are, do not approach them. Instead, call that number on your screen, 410-222-1490 or 911, and we'll send somebody out to follow up. Sarge?
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Arundel County Police could not join us today, so I do have their individual, Brandon Anthony Holmes. On Saturday, June 25th, 2016, at approximately 3 p.m., Anne Arundel County Western District Police officers responded to the area of the Knights Inn located at 3380 Laurel Fort Meade Road in Laurel, Maryland, for a shooting. When officers arrived on scene, they located a 19-year-old Dylan Plummer suffering from a gunshot wound to the upper body. Plummer was transported to the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Hospital, but later died from his injuries. Anne Arundel County homicide detectives worked with Western District detectives in regards to processing the crime scene for evidence. Several witnesses were located and interviewed. Detectives learned that 2 black males approached the victim, where one black male produced a handgun. During the encounter between the victim and suspects, the one suspect shot the victim in the upper body. During the course of the investigation, several tips came into the Anne Arundel County Homicide Unit from the public identifying the suspect. Several search warrants have been executed in regards, and items of evidentiary value were collected. Through witnesses, victim, and collected evidence, the investigation revealed that an armed robbery had taken place at the time Mr. Plummer had been shot. On Saturday, July 9th, 2016, homicide detectives obtained an arrest warrant charging Brandon Anthony Holmes, a 28-year-old male from the 5000 block of Kansas Avenue Northwest in Washington, D.C., for his involvement in the robbery and murder of Mr. Plummer. The arrest warrant charges Brandon Anthony Holmes with the following crimes: first-degree murder, second-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree assault, 2 counts of second-degree assault, 2 counts of robbery, 2 counts of armed robbery, 2 counts of theft less than $1,000, and 2 counts of reckless endangerment and a firearm used in a crime of violence. For those individuals from the Anne Arundel County Sheriff's Office, we have Antoine Tracy Gray, Sr. Gray was on probation for his prior assault conviction. On March 3rd of 2016, he reported to parole and probation and tested positive for marijuana. Gray is classified in the Violence Prevention Initiative due to the nature and amount of his charges. He was to maintain face-to-face meetings with his agent in order to stay in compliance. On March 17th, he failed to report as directed, and a bench warrant for the violation of probation was issued as a result. On May 23rd, another bench warrant was issued for Gray's child support being in arrears. On May 24th, another bench warrant was issued for Gray's failure to appear for his child support case. And on June 13th, yet another bench warrant was issued for Gray's failure to appear for his prior CDS case. So today we are looking for Antoine Tracy Gray, Sr. Court docket shows the last name spelled as G-R-E-Y. County Police prior arrest record shows it spelled G-R-A-Y. Either way, he's a 43-year-old black male with a date of birth of December 8th of 1972. He is 5 foot 7 inches tall, weighs 190 pounds, and has black hair and brown eyes. His last known address is 140 New Vernon Street in Annapolis. Our next suspect is Allison Mae Greenwell. Greenwell has 2 open warrants. The first is for assault and reckless endangerment. The second is for violating the terms of her probation for a prior assault conviction. So let's get into the details. On May 27th of 2016, Anne Arundel County Police responded to the area of Muddy Creek Road near Central Avenue for a domestic. Information provided stated 2 white females and a white male were struggling outside of a white pickup truck on the shoulder of the roadway. Upon arrival, officers made contact with the 3 individuals and identified that one of the females, Allison Greenwell, was bleeding from the stomach. She had received several stab wounds in her abdomen around and above the navel area. Greenwell stated she had been thrown from the truck by the other 2 subjects. The other female involved told a very different story. She had been dating Greenwell for over a year and had expressed her interest to end the relationship and move out just earlier that evening. Greenwell grabbed the female by the throat and choked her to the point she felt as if she was going to black out. Then Greenwell let go of her, grabbed a steak knife, and repeatedly plunged it into her own stomach several times. Then the male subject arrived home, and somehow the 3 ended up in his truck, driving to Shadyside, possibly to take Greenwell's girlfriend to a parent's house where she was going to live after the breakup. As the truck approached Muddy Creek Road, Greenwell grabbed the wheel, nearly causing them to wreck. The male subject stopped the vehicle, walked to the passenger side door, and told Greenwell to get out. Greenwell allegedly punched the male in the face, and a fight ensued. Somehow, Greenwell calmed down, and the three got back into the truck and continued their drive. While driving, Greenwell started punching and biting both the male and female in the truck. The male stopped the truck again, and this time, the other female pushed Greenwell out of the vehicle. A struggle ensued outside of the truck, and that's when the police pulled up. The officer that took the initial report applied for charges against Greenwell, and an arrest warrant was issued as a result. On June 14th of 2016, the court issued a bench warrant for Greenwell for violating the terms of her probation. You can probably guess why. When she picked up the new charges for the assault we just spoke about, it directly conflicted with the probation agreement to obey all laws. Today, we are looking for Allison Mae Greenwell, who is a 22-year-old white female with a date of birth of March 15th of 1994. She is 5 foot 5 inches tall, weighs 140 pounds, and has brown hair and brown eyes. And her last known address is 1306 Juniper Street in Shadyside. Our next subject is David Elliott Kawaka Kai Klemenko. Klemenko has 3 open warrants: failed to register as a sex offender, violation of probation, and failure to appear for court. During March of this year, Klemenko was convicted of third-degree sex offense. He is required to register for 25 years as a Tier 2 child sexual offender on the Maryland Sex Offender Registry. Klemenko last registered on April 1st at County Police's Southern District Station. During that interaction, he listed his address as homeless in Annapolis, Arundel County. On April 6, police were alerted that the GPS tracker Klemenko was ordered to wear indicated it had been tampered with and showed no movement. A parole and probation agent went to the last known address where the GPS identified, and sure enough, the device was found in the front yard of a residence in Harwood. Since April 6, Klemenko has failed to register as a sex offender with the Anne Arundel County Police Department or any other jurisdiction. This warrant was issued as a result of his failure to comply with the court's order. On May 4th of 2016, Klemenko's probation for the sex offense conviction was violated due to his failure to comply with several conditions, in addition to cutting off that tracker and failing to register, resulting in the second warrant being generated. And on June 10th of 2016, Klemenko failed to appear for court in Baltimore City for prior CDS possession charges. The third warrant was issued as a result of his FTA. Today, we are looking for David Elliott Kawaka Kai Klemenko, who is a 28-year-old white male with a date of birth of May 18th of 1988. He is 5 foot 10 inches tall, weighs 165 pounds, and has black hair and brown eyes. Klemenko's last known address is 14 Old South River Road in Edgewater. And our last subject today is Richard Dale Jones. Jones violated the term of his probation and took and then used a vehicle without the owner's permission. So let's get into the details of his 2 warrants. At the onset of this year in 2016, Jones was on probation for a prior CDS possession conviction. There were several terms of the probation he agreed to after being convicted. For example, he agreed to totally abstain from alcohol, illegal substances, and abusive use of any prescription drug. When County Fire responded for an unconscious subject found foaming at the mouth in a ditch, they rendered care to include administering Narcan. Thankfully, fire got there in time and saved his life. Why are we talking about that subject in the ditch? You know it. It's Richard Jones. Here's some truth and fact about the effectiveness of Narcan for opioid overdoses. Jones went from foaming at the mouth and unconscious to coherent and admitting to the officer on the scene that he had used heroin. So there you go. And a warrant for violating his probation was issued. On July 7th, County Police applied for charges against Jones for taking a vehicle without the owner's consent, which resulted in the second warrant being generated, adding to the pile for Jones. Today we are looking for Richard Dale Jones, who is a 33-year-old white male with the date of birth of November 17th of 1982. He is 5 foot 9 inches tall, weighs 180 pounds, and has brown hair and brown eyes. His last known address is 418 Highland Drive in Edgewater. So to our viewers, if you know where any of those individuals are, do not approach them. Instead, call that number on your screen, 410-222-1490, or 911 24 hours a day. Before we wrap up, I'd like to take a minute to thank those individuals that allow our show to happen every single month. On behalf of Sheriff Bateman, I'd like to extend our gratitude to County Executive Steve Shue, Anne Arundel Chief of Police Tim Altamari, Annapolis Chief of Police Mike Pristoop, and Maryland State Police Superintendent Colonel Bill Palazzi, and also that gentleman behind that camera, Mr. Dale Boyer. Thank you for joining us for this month's Anne Arundel's Most Wanted. I'm Lieutenant Jennifer Gilbert Duran. We'll see you next month.